Have you ever felt invisible? Like your very existence was overlooked, dismissed, erased by someone you trusted most? That's exactly how I felt living with Theron Voss. A man who controlled every moment made me feel like a shadow in my own life. But what happens when the invisible woman decides to become someone else entirely? When silence turns into power and pain into a plan? Listen closely, because this is the story of how I reclaimed my life, my identity, and my dignity, and exposed the man who thought he could keep me hidden forever. From the very first day I met Theron, I sensed something elusive about him. A charisma that pulled you in, but a coldness that pushed you away. Our relationship began with hope. I was a creative, passionate designer, eager to make my mark. Theron was a rising CEO in the bustling world of media and technology, commanding rooms with ease and respect. But beneath that polished exterior lay a man who saw people only as pawns in his game, and I was no exception. For years, I tried to carve out my place beside him, clinging to the belief that love could soften even the hardest heart. But Theron's indifference was a quiet storm that grew, a slow erasure of my presence. He would dismiss my ideas, belittle my achievements, and sometimes ignore me altogether as if I were a ghost wandering through his life. The friends I confided in noticed it too, asking how I could endure being treated like I didn't matter. My days blurred between working late into the night on projects that thrilled me and coming home to a silence so loud it crushed my spirit. The office was no refuge either. Theron's firm grip extended beyond home. Every meeting, every decision was a reminder that I was overshadowed by his power and ambition. The man I once admired became the man who made me invisible. It wasn't just the neglect. I found myself doubting everything about me. My confidence waned. I stopped recognizing the woman I used to be. I became smaller, quieter, fading into the background of my own story. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, I met Aisling Rain at an art exhibition. She was unlike anyone I'd ever known. Fierce, compassionate, and unapologetically authentic. She listened to my story with a knowing gaze, then said, "You're not invisible, Elowen. You've just forgotten how to be seen. Let me help you find yourself again." From that moment, Aisling became my anchor. She challenged me to confront my fears, to rebuild not just my image but my sense of worth. Our sessions went beyond coaching. They were soul searches, fierce battles with doubt and pain, and slowly, a reclamation of my identity. I learned to carry myself differently, to speak with conviction, to demand respect. Yet the shadow of Theron loomed large. My desire to simply survive shifted into a quiet fury. The man who erased me had to pay, but not with rage or violence, with intelligence, precision, and the strength of a woman reborn. I began collecting pieces of my life scattered by his neglect, emails dismissed, moments ignored, subtle insults, and weaving them into a tapestry of truth. Aisling helped me strategize how to use my work, my network, and my newfound confidence to expose the cracks in Theron's polished facade. The world around me changed as I did. Colleagues who once overlooked me began to notice the shift. New opportunities arose. Doors that had been firmly shut began to open. I was no longer the woman who could be ignored. I was a force to be reckoned with, a phoenix rising from ashes of invisibility. But the road ahead was perilous. Theron was not a man to lose control easily. I had to be careful, patient, and unwavering. With Aisling's guidance, I prepared to dismantle everything he had built on my erasure. This was no longer about reclaiming love or forgiveness. It was about reclaiming power, justice, and the right to be seen. As Elowen Cade, in all my truth and strength. For years, I carried the weight of silence and invisibility, but beneath that quiet despair, a flicker of determination began to grow, a need to understand how I was erased and by whom. Slowly, piece by piece, I started gathering fragments of truth hidden in the shadows of my life with Theron. My first breakthrough came unexpectedly. During a late-night work session, I stumbled upon an email thread between Theron and a colleague discussing a business trip. The tone was casual, but the content revealed meetings I was never invited to, decisions made without my knowledge. It was a reminder that I was no longer part of his world, not even as a partner. The sting of exclusion was sharp, but it fueled my resolve. I realized that my invisibility was no accident. It was orchestrated. Determined to go deeper, I enlisted the help of Aisling, who used her expertise and connections to dig into Theron's professional and personal life. Together, we uncovered unsettling patterns, secret phone calls, unexplained absences, and more alarmingly, evidence of his emotional detachment and subtle manipulations designed to isolate me. It was as if every thread of my existence was being pulled away slowly, one by one. Nights became restless as I replayed memories through a new lens. The dismissive glances, the cold silences, the small humiliations, each now confirmed as intentional wounds rather than mere neglect. The emotional toll was crushing. I felt a profound loneliness, like being trapped behind a glass wall, visible yet unreachable. One night, as I sifted through old messages, I found a voicemail from someone I didn't recognize. A woman's voice, cold and confident, laughing as she talked about making sure Eloan never sees it coming. My heart sank. This was no longer just neglect or emotional distance. It was deliberate. I shared the voicemail with Aisling, who nodded gravely. "This is bigger than you thought. You're dealing with someone who wanted to erase you completely," she said. The revelation ignited a fierce flame inside me. I was no longer willing to be the invisible woman. With Aisling's help, I began compiling every piece of evidence: emails, text messages, surveillance footage, even witness accounts. We mapped out Theron's network of deception, uncovering not only emotional betrayal, but a conspiracy to replace me in his life and professional world. As days turned into weeks, our investigation intensified. I found myself living two lives, one public, polished, and confident, the other a private maze of emails, surveillance footage, and whispered conversations. The duality was exhausting, but necessary. Theron's carefully maintained facade began to crack under the weight of our findings. We discovered that he had been undermining my projects at work, leaking false information to damage my reputation, and quietly wooing a woman who was his perfect image of a partner: obedient, beautiful, and utterly devoted. The more I uncovered, the clearer the picture became. Theron had not only made me invisible emotionally, but was orchestrating a campaign to undermine my professional reputation. False rumors, sabotaged projects, and even anonymous tips to our mutual contacts painted me as unreliable, distracted, even unstable. The betrayal was more than personal. It threatened my entire career and livelihood. One evening, Aisling presented a file that made my blood run cold. Video footage showing Theron meeting secretly with a woman I'd never met before, someone who bore an uncanny resemblance to me, yet exuded a cold, ruthless aura. It was clear this woman was not just an acquaintance, but part of a deeper scheme. The woman was poised, manipulative, and clearly intended to step into my life and role. Questions flooded my mind. Who was she? What role did she play? And most terrifying, how long had this been going on? Theron's betrayal was no longer just about emotional neglect. It was a carefully crafted plan to replace me, erase my existence, and install a perfect, obedient substitute. The thought sent a chill through me. But alongside the fear grew resolve. I wasn't going to vanish without a fight. That night, I lay awake, grappling with the reality that the man I loved was actively erasing me. But in that darkness, a fierce resolve ignited. I was not going to be a forgotten ghost in his life. With Aisling's help, I formulated a plan, not born from vengeance, but from a deep need to reclaim my identity and dignity. We began collecting undeniable proof: securing witnesses, and laying the groundwork for a revelation that would shake the foundation of Theron's carefully controlled world. Every step forward was painful. The constant fear of discovery, the weight of betrayal, the loneliness of walking this path. Yet with every secret uncovered, I felt stronger, more alive. The emotional roller coaster was relentless. There were moments when I doubted myself, moments when the weight of the past threatened to consume me. But Aisling's steady presence reminded me, strength was not the absence of pain, but the courage to rise through it. I practiced standing tall, speaking with certainty, and believing in my worth again. It was a rebirth, a shedding of the invisible cloak Theron had forced upon me. Slowly, the tides began to turn. Colleagues who once dismissed me started noticing my renewed vigor. Doors I thought closed forever began to open. Opportunities surfaced, and I seized them with a ferocity I never knew I had. All the while, Theron remained unaware of how close I was to dismantling his web of deceit. This was no longer about reclaiming love or forgiveness. It was about reclaiming power, justice, and the right to be seen, as Elowen Cade, in all my truth and strength. For months, the fragments of betrayal haunted me, yet I was consumed by a fierce determination not just to expose Theron, but to reclaim everything he tried to steal. My identity, my dignity, my life. The question wasn't just how to confront him, but how to do so in a way that left no room for denial, no shadows for him to hide behind. I remember the night I sat with Aisling, poring over the piles of evidence we'd collected. Every email, every secret meeting uncovered, every whisper caught on tape was a testament to his deceit. But raw evidence alone would not be enough. The truth had to be delivered with precision and undeniable force. "We need a strategy," Aisling said, her voice steady but intense. "One that dismantles him piece by piece, publicly and privately." I agreed. No more silent suffering. No more invisibility. I was ready to step out of the shadows and confront him. On my terms. Our plan began with rebuilding my presence in the company. Theron had worked hard to isolate me, but I refused to be sidelined. I threw myself into every project, every presentation, every meeting. I showed the team that I was not broken. I was resilient. I reminded the world that I was still a force to be reckoned with. Alongside that, Aisling worked her network to secure allies. Colleagues who had witnessed Theron's coldness, who had noticed his manipulation but felt powerless, now felt empowered to come forward. Their voices were vital. Together, we would create a chorus of truth too loud to ignore. I also reached out to former clients and partners who had been subtly pushed away by Theron's schemes. Their stories painted a broader picture. A man not only betraying me but sabotaging others to maintain control. Meanwhile, we meticulously tracked Theron's movements. His days were filled with clandestine meetings, secretive phone calls, and unexplained absences. We mapped out his patterns, noting the dates and locations. Every interaction with the woman he'd groomed to replace me was documented. One of the most painful discoveries was the woman herself. Watching her move through my life like a shadow sent waves of grief and anger crashing through me. She was everything I was not: polished, unyielding, seemingly flawless. But beneath that veneer, I knew she was just a pawn in Theron's game. To expose him fully, we needed more than just proof of infidelity. Theron's damage was systematic. He had worked behind the scenes to undermine my credibility at work, spreading rumors, orchestrating failures, and turning colleagues against me. We dug into his financial dealings, uncovering irregularities that suggested embezzlement and cover-ups. This was a man whose betrayal extended beyond the personal into professional treachery. Exposing this could destroy him, but it was a double-edged sword. Taking on Theron meant risking everything: my job, my reputation, even my safety. His network was vast, and he was not one to back down easily. Yet with every risk came renewed resolve. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for my future, for the truth, for justice. Our first move was subtle, releasing small, verifiable details to trusted contacts to sow doubt about Theron's integrity. Rumors began to ripple through the company, questions whispered in boardrooms and break rooms. Theron sensed the shift immediately. His usual confident mask began to slip in private meetings. I could see it in his eyes. Suspicion, fear, anger. Simultaneously, I prepared my public resurgence. Each successful project, each well-received presentation was a statement. I was still here, still capable, still relevant. Aisling secured a crucial ally from Theron's circle, a disgruntled former associate with a wealth of inside knowledge. Through careful negotiation, we obtained documents and recordings that would be pivotal in the coming confrontation. But the hardest part was managing my emotions. Every day was a battle against bitterness and despair. Nights were restless, filled with memories of love turned to betrayal. Yet I reminded myself that pain was a crucible. It was forging me into someone stronger. One evening, alone in my apartment, I stared at the framed photo of Theron and me on happier days. The man smiling back was a stranger now. I whispered a vow. I would reclaim my life, no matter the cost. As the pieces fell into place, we planned the final act. Theron's next major announcement, a high-profile event meant to showcase his leadership and secure his position. We would turn that stage into the arena of truth. The logistics were complex. We arranged for media presence, secured a venue filled with influential figures, and coordinated with legal experts to ensure every revelation was watertight. I rehearsed my statement endlessly, not as a victim, but as a victor. On the day of the event, nerves surged through me, but beneath them was calm purpose. This was the moment I'd been preparing for. As Theron took the stage, confidence radiating, I felt a quiet satisfaction. The video began. Footage that showed everything. Secret meetings, betrayal, manipulation. Gasps and murmurs filled the hall as faces turned, eyes widened. Theron's facade crumbled visibly. The man who once controlled every room was exposed. I stepped forward, my voice clear and unwavering, telling my story, owning my truth. In that moment, I was no longer invisible. I was seen. I was heard. The aftermath was swift. Investigations launched, colleagues rallied, and I reclaimed my place, not as the woman broken by betrayal, but as a force of resilience and justice. It was not just revenge, it was rebirth. The months following the revelation of the plan's framework were the most intense and draining of my life. Every move I made was calculated, every word measured. It was no longer just about exposing Theron. It was about dismantling the world he had built on lies, brick by brick. I wasn't simply after revenge. I wanted to reclaim my life, my dignity, and my future. Each step forward was a battle, and I was prepared to fight until the end. We began by targeting the foundation of Theron's power, his professional network. Theron had spent years cultivating influential partners, key clients, and loyal supporters who ensured his position remained unshaken. But a network built on deception was inherently fragile. I knew that if I could make these allies question their loyalty, his empire would start to crumble. Aisling and I compiled a dossier of indisputable evidence: financial misdeeds, manipulated contracts, hidden communications, and the web of lies that connected them all. With this, we started discreet conversations with some of his most trusted associates. We approached them with tact, presenting facts while appealing to their own sense of justice. The reaction was varied: shock, denial, anger, and ultimately, doubt. The first cracks in his fortress appeared when a longtime client abruptly reconsidered a lucrative contract. Rumors began swirling of questionable ethics and betrayal. A senior executive withdrew support. His inner circle started to shift uneasily, whispering among themselves in boardrooms and private lounges. One night, my phone buzzed with a cryptic message. "They're questioning him. Keep pushing." It was from an anonymous source inside Theron's circle, and it fueled my resolve. Behind the scenes, I orchestrated setbacks that seemed coincidental but were carefully planned. Key meetings were disrupted. Promising deals collapsed. Negative press began to trickle in, hinting at scandals no one dared to name outright. Theron tried to maintain control, but the pressure was mounting like an unstoppable tide. As the company began to fracture, I focused on rebuilding my image and influence. I threw myself into projects with relentless energy, proving to colleagues and clients alike that I was not the broken woman he wanted to leave behind. I became a symbol of strength and renewal. Yet, beneath this exterior, the personal toll weighed heavily on me. I carried the dual burden of public composure and private turmoil. Nights were spent sifting through emails and recordings, piecing together the story of betrayal. Memories of happier times with Theron haunted me, twisting pain with nostalgia. The most challenging phase was preparing for direct confrontation. I arranged a private dinner with some of his closest confidants, people I knew could sway the balance. Over wine and carefully chosen words, I hinted at the unrest within the company and the inevitable revelation. The flicker of fear in Theron's eyes that reached me across the room was a small victory. But he was not finished yet. In the following weeks, the fallout accelerated. Shareholders demanded explanations, the board grew restless, and internal investigations were launched. Theron lashed out, desperate to protect his legacy, but his once ironclad grip was slipping. Then came the company's annual general meeting, the ultimate stage for our final act. The room buzzed with anticipation. Shareholders, media, staff, all gathered to witness what many suspected would be a reckoning. Theron stood at the podium, radiating forced confidence. As I stepped forward to speak, the atmosphere shifted palpably. I opened by acknowledging the company's successes and the recent turbulence, setting a tone of both respect and gravity. Then, one by one, I presented the evidence, documents, emails, recordings, each piece weaving a tapestry of deceit that no one could deny. Gasps rippled through the crowd as faces paled and eyes widened. Murmurs swelled into whispers of shock and disbelief. Theron's facade crumbled, his words faltered, defenses collapsed, and he was left exposed before everyone he had deceived. The vote of no confidence was swift and unanimous. As he was escorted from the room, a strange mix of emotions welled up in me. Relief for justice served, sorrow for the years stolen, and a quiet hope for what lay ahead. The weeks following were a whirlwind. Investigations proceeded, damaged relationships began to mend, and the company slowly healed from the wounds inflicted. I reconnected with colleagues who had stood by me and forged new alliances grounded in honesty and trust. Most importantly, I began the slow process of healing within myself. Theron's downfall was complete, but it was not the end of my story. It was the beginning of my rebirth. Every scar, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt had forged a stronger, wiser version of me. I had taken back my life, my identity, and my dignity. Not through anger or violence, but through perseverance, intelligence, and the relentless pursuit of truth. The dust had barely settled when the true weight of what had transpired began to press down on everyone involved. The company was no longer the same. The scars of betrayal left marks that would take years to fully heal. Every corridor and office whispered the story of deceit and downfall. I found myself at a crossroads, no longer the man who naively trusted, but someone who had faced the darkest betrayal and emerged determined to rebuild from the ashes. It wasn't just about reclaiming what was mine. It was about reclaiming my dignity and peace. Theron's fall was swift and unforgiving. Stripped of his titles and wealth, he faced the full consequences of his actions, both in the courtrooms and in the public eye. Those who once flocked to his side distanced themselves, fearing the stain of association. His name became a cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones, a stark reminder of how greed and deception destroy. Yet justice alone was not the balm I needed. The emotional scars ran deeper than any courtroom drama could mend. Trust shattered is hard to piece back together. Some colleagues doubted me once, but as the company healed under my steady hand, they came to see the strength beneath my calm exterior. I fostered transparency, rebuilt trust with integrity, and encouraged a culture where such darkness could never thrive again. Outside the professional world, my life slowly began to mend. The sleepless nights spent replaying memories, the rage and the sorrow softened with time. Reconnecting with family and close friends brought comfort and strength. Their unwavering support reminded me I was not alone in this battle. Forgiveness became the greatest lesson, not forgiving Theron. His betrayals were unforgivable, but forgiving myself for the pain I had endured, for the trust misplaced, and for the mistakes made along the way. Forgiveness was the key to moving forward unburdened. I did not seek revenge through cruelty. My retribution was in the form of truth, exposed on the grandest stage, the ruin of his empire and reputation. I reclaimed my life with honor and refused to sink to the level of hatred. The company rebounded. Fresh leadership, renewed values, and unwavering dedication breathed new life into the business. New contracts, new partnerships, and a restored reputation painted a hopeful future. Yet it was my personal growth that was the most profound victory. I was no longer a victim, but a survivor. A man shaped by trials and strengthened by resilience. The scars told my story, a testament to endurance. Sometimes I wondered about Theron's fate. Did he regret his choices? Did he see the devastation he left behind? I did not dwell on these questions. My life was mine to live, forward-facing. To anyone betrayed, hurt, or broken, you are not your wounds, but the strength with which you rise. True revenge isn't destruction. It's rebuilding with integrity and courage. The path to healing is tough. Pain resurfaces unexpectedly, but these moments can remind you of your strength. True justice comes from reclaiming your life and finding peace. I chose to be more than a victim. I chose to author my own story.